What's happening, guys? What's going on, YouTube? You guys have tuned into Rules for Rebels. We have an interesting situation with landlords and kind of the real estate industry going on in Los Angeles during all this chaos going on right now. And I'm not going to be using the beer sickness word anymore. Not because I really care about the couple dollars that I'm going to make off of a video, but because if a video is not monetized, it doesn't get shown, and I want people to see the videos because I think these are interesting subject matters and topics. So, I'm either going to say blank or just call it the beer sickness or something else, but Los Angeles has just announced that landlords cannot evict tenants impacted by the beer sickness, the LA mayor said. Now, on the surface, I think this is a great thing, right? Like, I really feel bad for the more vulnerable people in society right now. Well, a lot of people are running out buying 3 years worth of toilet paper and 6 years worth of food. There are a lot of people who work in the service industry who aren't working right now. There's a lot of people who live check to check and don't have money to stock up on things and rely on being able to buy things as they get their money. Some people work for cash and are paid every day. Some people get paid every Friday. And, even though I'm much more financially stable today than I was, years ago, it really wasn't that long ago. It was really only a couple years ago that I was living check to check. I had debt. Sometimes before I got my paycheck, I was digging into couch cushions, looking for money to either buy myself a little lunch or throw 70 cents in a gas tank so I'd be able to get to work. I definitely feel for the more vulnerable people in society. And on the surface, this sounds like a feel-good story, right? Nobody's going to get evicted while we're dealing with the beer sickness chaos. But here's an important thing to remember. I notice online and in Reddit forums and things like that, landlords are like villainized. Landlords provide no value to society, and we should ban property ownership. And there's a lot of this kind of Bernie Sanders kind of socialist talk going on. But you got to keep in mind, there are a lot of wealthy landlords out there. There are a lot of giant corporations who own mega apartment buildings and things like that. A lot of landlords are normal people like you and me just trying to pay the bills. I actually became a landlord by accident. My folks had moved out of state. Housing wasn't doing very well at the time. The move happened kind of quick. My parents had 30 years worth of stuff in their house. They just really didn't have the time to pack it all up and try to put it into storage and find a tenant. So my dad was like, look, would you do me a favor? Would you rent out your house? Because, I was a young guy. I didn't have a lot of stuff. I didn't really have a lot of ties to the place. Would you rent out your place and move into our house, and I'll give you a great deal on the rent? And it was a nicer house. So we wound up doing that for a number of years. But I became a landlord completely by accident. There's other people who maybe they get transferred out of state and they're underwater on their mortgage, or they don't have time to sell the house or whatever else. And so they say, I'm going to keep this property as a rental property. It'll cover the mortgage, and, I'm going to move out of state and I'll deal with it later. Or sometimes maybe you get a temporary transfer. Maybe you got to move out of state for 6 months or a year or 2 years. But eventually you want to come back, so you don't want to sell the house. So my point here is that all landlords aren't the monopoly guy with a monocle. And so what's kind of interesting here is the government is saying you can't evict people, but what about the small-time landlords who are just scraping by, who are maybe breaking even or barely cash flowing? What's going to happen to them when they can't evict somebody and their mortgage company isn't going to put I was going to say an arboretum. An arboretum is where you go look at plants. The mortgage company isn't going to stop their mortgage payments. So, I think it's kind of dangerous territory when the government gets to be friendly and kind with other people's money. If the government doesn't want people to get evicted, if the Los Angeles mayor doesn't want people to get evicted, maybe he should put his money where his mouth is and help out some of these landlords who are still going to have mortgages to pay. I think this could also be done in a way where, if you own, a lot of times, the landlord's rules and laws and things like that, if you own over 4 properties, this applies to you. If you own over 10 properties, this applies to you. If you live on site, this doesn't apply to you, right? So a lot of times the laws around being a landlord are targeted at larger, more established landlords who can maybe afford some of the bookkeeping or whatever else that's involved. And so, I think it might be good to say, look, if you own over 5 properties, you can't evict people. If you own, 1 property or 2 properties, business is business. At the end of the day, you got to make your mortgage payment. So it just kind of annoys me when the government decides that they can be nice and friendly and charitable and caring but it's not actually them that are going to take the hit on this. Like I said, it's a tough issue. I'm not sure where I stand on it. I don't want to be a cold, heartless person. I have seen a lot of great landlords on some of the landlord forums that I'm a member of who've said, you know what, I'm giving my tenants a break on the rent this month. I'm not making anybody pay. I can afford it. I've seen other landlords say, I'm not, everybody's got to pay rent. I got to pay my bills, but I'm not going to be charging anybody late fees. I'm trying to be a good citizen. I'm trying to be a good neighbor. So I have seen a lot of landlords who are being friendly and kind and trying to, kind of help their neighbor. But ultimately, at the end of the day, people are going to lose their houses if they're not able to collect rent. So let's give this story a read. This one comes to us from Curbed. I actually saw this one covered by the New York Times and the LA Times within the past couple days. This article is just a couple hours old, so I think there may be some new developments. Let's give it a read. LA mayor says you will not lose your housing during this crisis because you can't make the rent. Mayor Eric Garcetti announced this evening that he signed an order halting residential evictions in the city of Los Angeles. You can be assured that you will not lose your housing during the crisis. Oh, there we go, of course. You can be assured you will not lose your housing during this crisis because you can't make the rent, Garcetti said, referring to the spread of novel coronas. The eviction moratorium will apply to tenants who are able to show an inability to pay rent due to circumstances related to the COVID-19 pandemic. Oh shit, I said I wasn't going to say that word and I just said it. Maybe YouTube will overlook one time. Here's another problem I'm seeing with a lot of these like stopgaps and help things. A lot of people are saying if you are quarantined or if you get tested and have a positive test, then this assistance becomes available to you. Well, here's an issue. The most vulnerable people in society are likely not insured and are not going to be able to pay for testing. Our country has done such a shit show job of rolling out this testing that I actually know somebody who was recently exposed to somebody in their work who has the beer sickness, and they're still not able to get tested for it. They were told, go home, tell everyone you've been into contact with that you were exposed to this, but keep coming to work. And by the way, they work at a hospital. Keep coming to work, and we'll have the results on Tuesday, and we'll decide what to do from there. There's people who are coming from at-risk areas. There's people who are showing the symptoms, and the tests just aren't out there. So I know Amazon recently said that if their workers are quarantined or test positive, they'll get paid for 2 weeks. Uber has said something similar, but again, good luck actually being able to get tested in the first place. The article goes on to say it's part of a long list of new guidelines and efforts that Garcetti laid out in a public address to stem the spread of the beer sickness and curb the economic impacts already being felt by many workers. Garcetti also noted that the city attorney's office is looking into whether the city could legally prevent commercial evictions for small businesses and restaurants. Garcetti has signed an order that will close bars and nightclubs and have restaurants closed for dining but open for delivery, takeout, and drive-through orders. The restrictions go into effect at midnight and will be in effect through March 31st unless they are rescinded or extended, Garcetti said. I want to stress that I have not taken these steps lightly, he said. To some it may feel wrong, but we need to take these steps to protect our city right now. Details of how the moratorium will work were not mentioned in the announcement, and the mayor's office did not immediately respond to a request for more information. As the city encourages people to stay home, there have been increasing attention on populations that do not have a permanent home, and their difficulties follow these directives. On Saturday, a group of homeless families and individuals reclaimed a Caltrans-owned home in El Sereno that was vacated for the now abandoned 710 Extension project. I don't feel safe being homeless during this health crisis. I need a place of my own to protect my children from the virus, Martha Escudero said, one of the women who moved into the empty home, in a statement. I'm scared for everyone who is one paycheck away from my situation, who may lose their jobs and then their housing because of the virus. The group calls itself Reclaiming Our Homes. Its members are calling for major investments in public housing and would like to see vacant housing used immediately to give people without homes a place to safely stay and wait out a health emergency. They do say in San Francisco and really all over California, there's a lot of these ghost homes that were bought up by Chinese investors that aren't being sold, aren't being rented, aren't being used. So it'll be interesting to see how far LA and really kind of surrounding cities in the whole state of California acts on this. In the city of Santa Monica, landlords have been barred from evicting tenants who have been impacted by COVID oh man, I did it again, by the beer sickness, including those who have been laid off or lost work hours due to the outbreak. Last week, several local lawmakers in the city of Los Angeles were working on a series of emergency proposals that sounded similar to the moratorium announced by the mayor today. They plan to introduce them on Tuesday at the next meeting of the Los Angeles City Council, which is operating on a limited schedule. With so many folks living paycheck to paycheck or relying on tips or gig work to pay their bills, we know there will be extra stress placed on Angelenos that many simply can't afford, Los Angeles City Council member Herb Wesson said Thursday. Wesson said his plan could also extend to small businesses that face eviction due to unpaid commercial leases and could provide assistance for mom and pop landlords. Okay, so that's kind of what we want to hear, assistance for landlords, right? Like if you're going to extend other people's money, help out those mom and pop landlords. Additionally, it could order the city attorney to come up with a strategy for working with banks and lenders to halt mortgage payments for individuals who have suffered a severe loss of wages due to the spread of the beer sickness. Now, none of this has really addressed what you're going to do to these landlords who can't evict people and have non-paying tenants. I think that's something that needs to be addressed or negotiated with mortgage companies. Larry Gross, executive director of the Coalition for Economic Survival, said she's worried about renters being able to access information about their rights right now. So many organizations run walk-in clinics or have first-come, first-served policies that require waiting rooms with others. Gross said he's meeting with his staff and attorneys that offer services to their clients to figure out how they're going to move forward without compromising anybody's health. The City of LA's Housing and Community Investment Department, which handles housing inspections and enforces the city's rent stabilization ordinance, has closed its walk-in counters, but residents can call 1-866-577-RENT, 8:30 to 4:30 Monday through Friday, or submit questions online. Let's see, we got some comments here. What do people have to say? Additionally, it would order the city to come up with a strategy for working with banks to halt payments. So does it, okay, so somebody had the same question I do. So does this include landlords who suffer severe lost wages when renters don't pay for a month or two? That would seem to be fair, but what do I know? Pretty much everyone will just stop paying their rent if they know they won't get evicted or have any consequences. Everybody just becomes a legal squatter. How about coming up with a fund to help those who are sick avoid eviction? Let's see. If we purge the homelessness from LA, this would reduce the number of infected, make it safer for citizens. LA Proud Boys supported this method of cleansing the city. We must be harsh with the homeless. This guy must be being sarcastic. I don't think anybody wants to purge the homeless. Landlord. Okay, so this is kind of the attitude I was talking about before. Landlords are greedy AF and no one cares. I'm a real estate investor. I treat humans as humans and stop worrying about pennies and feed some people. So I don't know. We're gonna wrap this video up. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button below, and we'll catch you in the next video.